Praise the Lord everyone! Welcome to the Bible Factory. In today's video we are going to know about the famous missionary Father Damien. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Damien was born on 3rd January 1840, the 17th child of corn merchant Franz de Wister and his wife Carter Wouters, in the village of Trimilo in Flemish Brabant. His brother could not fulfill his dream of traveling overseas to actively participate in missionary work. Damien took up his brother's dream as his own and went in his place on a mission abroad. Among the beautiful Hawaiian Islands in the Pacific, one island is called Molokai. It is inhabited entirely by lepers. In the Middle Ages, leprosy was quite common in Europe. In Hawaii, leprosy was known until the 1700s. When Chinese immigrants brought it to the islands, it spread very fast, and in the year 1865, the Hawaiian government tried to stop the disease by sending all the sufferers to Molokai. There they were left to live and die, together forgotten and cared for. In the year 1873, the Roman Catholic Bishop of the Hawaiian Island was dedicating a new chapel in Maui, a neighboring island of Molokai. After the ceremony, he stood talking with some of the young priests who had come out of the islands as missionaries. He asked them, "Would anyone among you go to Molokai to minister the lepers there?" The priests looked at each other in horror. To enter a land where every person you see is a leper, and to go on living there not just for a year or two, but for always. The idea was almost too ghastly to think about. One of the priests, however, seemed particularly interested. He was a Belgian, a little older than others, and missionary of some experience. His name was Joseph de Wester, which he had changed to Damien, one of the saints of the Catholic Church when he became a priest. His parents were farmers who had intended him for a business career, but his desire was to be a missionary. He was not really eligible at that time because he had not yet finished his training and theological studies, but the church leaders were impressed by the eagerness and allowed him to go. When he stepped out of the cattle boat to take up his new duties, he was shocked by the sights he saw. Imagine finding yourself in a village where everyone you meet is disfigured with frightful sores and distorted limbs. Imagine too that you know that you cannot escape from the village but must stay there until yourself become one of the lepers. That was the situation in which Father Damien found himself, yet he did not draw back. The conditions in which they existed were pitiful. There were no proper houses, only slightly built shelters made of branches and poles stuck in the ground and roofed by leaves of the tea plant or sugarcane. Father Damien himself had nowhere to sleep for the first new nights after his arrival, though he did not fear to work with lepers. Most of the lepers were strangers to each other when they were put in the island. Men and women, old and young, were thrown together without any distinction. Their clothes were generally filthy and infected with discharges from their sores. Water was hard to get even if they wanted to keep themselves clean. They were practically without medicines. Sometimes women and children who were in the last stages of the disease were carried off and dropped behind a stone wall and left to die there in order to get them out of the way. From the very beginning, Father Damien set out to remedy all this. Not all the lepers at the first welcomed his appearance among them. Some showed their resentment by most terrible method of attack. They rushed at him and flung their sore-covered arms around him. Damien endured all with his patience, which the Lord was teaching him in all these trials and ordeals. Many of the lepers were not clothed well enough to be protected from the damp and cold, and so became easy victims of different types of fevers which hastened the leprosy to kill them. Their feeble shelters were easily destroyed in bad weather. Father Damien sent repeated messages to Honolulu, the capital of islands, asking for assistance. Another problem which the priest had to face was the disposal of the dead. Those who were too poor to buy a coffin, it cost $2 then, were commonly buried coffinless just below the surface of the ground. When the heavy rains came to earth, covering the bodies was washed away, and the rotting bodies were left exposed. Damien insisted that the graves must be dug deeper. Often he had to dig them himself. He also wanted coffins for all the dead, so he set to work to make them for those who could not buy them. One of his greatest successes was to improve the water supply. In addition to this physical task, Father Damien had his religious duties to carry out. Every day he held worship services and visited the sick. Besides, he built several churches and chapels also. One day, about 12 years after he had first come to the island, Father Damien was pouring water into a foot bath. By accident, a stream of boiling water went straight on his hands and face. The priest looked down at them with strange expression on his face. He gave no sign of pain, for he felt none. But he experienced something even worse than the agony of scalding. One of the signs of a certain form of leprosy is that the hands and feet do not feel any pain. That stream of boiling water told Father Damien that he became a leper. Father Damien did not let his disease interfere with his work. He knew that the work he had begun would go after his death. That was his reward. When he died, the work among the lepers of the island was already well organized and the lepers were carefully tended. Father Damien died at the age of 49 from leprosy. He was buried on Molokai in April 15, 1889. Could we ask the Lord to let us have such a commitment as Father Damien, going to the extent of laying down our lives for the cause of those who are perishing? What a marvelous testimony! Father Damien was the only one among the other missionaries who reached the gospel to the lepers. Instead of the worldly pleasures, he sacrificed his entire life among the lepers and saved many souls for Christ. I hope you like this video. If you like, please subscribe our channel, like the video and share with your friends and family members. And don't forget to comment down below. Thank you so much for watching.